Today, my amazing listeners, I'm thrilled to welcome back to the podcast Joe Pulizzi. It's not often we have guests back on the show, so that might be a premonition to everyone out there how much I like today's guest. Joe was on our podcast back in 2017. Joe's episode was very memorable for me because of the insight that Joe laid out for content-focused businesses. And to me, his message made so much sense. There were a few points that Joe explained that really helped me along to continue to build this podcast. One was that you can't always monetize your passion. We have seen a lot of businesses fail due to people trying to monetize their passions. Some of them have actually been on the podcast in the early days, and it has led to a lot of heartbreak, wasted time, and mounds of debt. The second point that Joe made was that media channels are the original content marketing businesses for over 200 years, before content marketing was even a thing. They build a massive audience, sell the audience what they want, and then they diversify. Joe started Content Marketing Institute in 2007. Over the years, he built an incredibly successful business around content marketing, helping entrepreneurs all around the world. Eventually, their live event became the largest event in the world for content marketing, and Joe sold his company for $30 million. Joe then unofficially retired, became a novelist, and focused on his nonprofit. Then COVID hit in early 2020. People started reaching out to him for help to start content-based businesses, most likely due to the fact that so many people were out of work, staying at home, and had little to do. He noticed a spike in his book sales that he published back in 2016. He also noticed a lot more momentum on his podcast that had been stagnant for a few years. People were looking for a solution, so Joe put his mystery novel away and released a new version of his book, Content Inc. He started a new he started a new newsletter, fired up the podcast, and he's back in business. Today, we're going to dissect that book, and let me be the first to tell you, it's a darn good book to dissect for what is happening in the online and global economy, online world and global economy today. Joe, welcome back to the show. How you doing?
Chris, I'm doing fantastic. It's like this is your life in the last 5 years. You just you just went through. So I'm like, oh
Exactly.
yeah, I did do that because of that. And I did do a sabbatical and all that good stuff. But it's
We
good seeing you again. Thanks for having me back. It feels
yes,
like this is a big thing that you're having me back. So
yes,
thank you for the secondary request on that. So no,
absolutely,
looking
yeah.
forward to digging into wherever you want to go.
It was a very memorable podcast, and it was the first time that in this when I had it on the show, it was a couple hundred episodes in, and it was the first time that I had talked with anyone or really dug into the content model. And it kind of goes without showing that I think even a lot of entrepreneurs out there still think today that business models come from getting an idea, building a product and service around that idea, and then launching it to the world, which this is kind of like the content model is marketing model is like, no, build the audience first and then start selling them stuff, which I love, absolutely love.
Well, I think, it's crazy. We talked about this last time. I think that it's a no-brainer and it's the least risky model if you wanted to build an audience first. Now, granted, it does take some time, but if you look at the amount of failure in traditional businesses, product first businesses, we hear
Mm-hmm.
about all the unicorns and the billion-dollar businesses, but those are less than 1% of 1%.
Yeah.
Most of the ones that are not successful, it's because they are doing it the very traditional model, which is nothing wrong with it. But we were like, hey, there's got to be a better way. What if you went out and build the audience first? So you're building a pre-customer database is what you're doing. And then
Absolutely.
once you understand the needs and wants and desires of that audience, then and basically just listen to what that audience needs, then you can launch all sorts of products and services. That's what we talk about in the Content Inc. book. And that's what I think is just I think that's the new model that we're going to start seeing more and more, whatever they end up calling it, just because you have more and more people that only need a smartphone to do business today.
Yeah.
And they can create content on a consistent basis, build an audience, and then we'll see all these new businesses. So maybe we are in the golden age of entrepreneurship.
When people ask me about content marketing business models, I often describe it as an entrepreneur, if you build a model like this, you're creating an insurance policy around what you're building, your time that you're spending into this, because the insurance here is that, say you build a model and a business and then you sell that business or you move on to another one, you still have that personal brand and
Mm-hmm.
audience that want to follow you, the raving fans that are out there. And because of that, you're not just selling like oh, I built this product or productized service, it's gone, and then there's still no personal brand
Yeah.
around you. People, there's no audience there. And is it for entrepreneurs that invest their time, so much time and energy into what they build, it's important to have that, because then you're protected when you go to a bit when you go to the next thing. You can say, hey, raving fans, just come along with me, now I'm doing this thing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they're like, oh, Chris or Joe's doing this thing, I want to do what Chris and Joe are doing. And then you can monetize that, right?
Well, I mean, if you look at it, I mean, you know, some of my mentors, they work this way where they'll give out amazing information over and over and over and over again. And that information is hopefully used by somebody and they leverage it. We're doing the same thing, but we're memorializing it on podcasts, on
Mm-hmm.
webinars, on email newsletters, on blogs, TikTok, whatever the case is. And then each time you do that, you're building a little piece of an asset
Yeah.
overnight. So if you do it for a long enough period of time, you're right. You have built this asset that then you can monetize forever and ever and ever. And I think it's the flexibility that you have. And maybe it's, we just did a research study at the Tilt where we found out that the big driver is not I want to create content, it's independence,
Mm-hmm.
it's freedom,
Yeah.
it's flexibility of hours.
Yeah.
So because you've built this asset that you can now leverage many different ways, many different monetization paths, many different business models, it's it's just a better life in my opinion. I mean, who doesn't want to call their own shots, work whenever they want to, be able to spend time with my kids? I mean, that's kind of the biggest thing for me in the last. So I was in a corporate gig from when I got out of college. I got my master's degree all the way up to 2007. I couldn't call my own shots. If I had to go on a travel gig, I had to do that. My kids were very young. Wasn't able to spend a lot of time because I was on the road 35-40% of the time. It's a lot
Mm.
of time to spend on the road and not see your kids grow up. And then you start a business. I was working twice as hard in this content business, but I never missed a thing
Yeah.
because
Nice.
I could say I'm gonna, if I have to work from 12 to 4 in the morning, that's what you do. But I freed up the day so that I could go to Daddy Donut Day,
Uh-huh.
whatever
Uh-huh.
the case is. So that's, I think a lot of people forget that. You talked about, you know, whether you call it the passion economy, the creator economy, you get this idea, whatever. I don't think a lot of people are talking about that. This is, I think, the way that work was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And we forgot when we got into the whole 9 to 5 industrialized age that, oh, we got to go get a job.
Yeah.
I think we're finally coming back to that as my kids now enter college, which is they're both going to college away from home for the first time. I want them to go to college for a new experience. I want
Mm-hmm.
them to go break things and get into trouble and mature and whatever the case is. But if they were just going to for the next step of their career, it's probably not the best decision. if that
Yes.
if that's why they were doing it. But
Yeah.
I want them to go just to go and get out and actually be around people that they haven't been around for 18 months because of this pandemic thing. So that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, and I think what we forget as entrepreneurs too is a lot of us started businesses so we could have more freedom. It wasn't like, oh, I want to start a business so I have less freedom. That's never the
Yeah.
thought process. It's like I want more time freedom. I want more money to do the things that I want to do, and I want something that fulfills me. And then what so often happens is we build a business model that traps us, and we're just in another job.
That's right.
And so I know people that have 8-figure companies that are absolutely mentally exhausted, pulling 60 plus hours per week. They're bogged down in the tasky things of their companies, and it's driving them crazy. And we have to have the discussion often. It's like, did you build a business to be more stressed out? And the answer is no. And then so you have to stop doing the things that stress you
Yes.
out, no matter what it takes. And it's not always about making more money. It's about building the business model that works well for you, which again,
Yeah.
why a content marketing business model is so great. Before we dive in more to things, Joe, as I started prepping for the podcast, I realized that, kind of no surprise probably to you, that there was too much content out there about you and then what you've done and then what we've talked about in the past in content marketing for just one show. So I kind of simplified it most as possible, as best as possible. So we're going to dissect your book, and I recommend everybody checking this out. It's a really good book, and it simplifies the content marketing model. It's called Content Inc., completely updated and expanded from the second edition, and very current. Joe wrote this in 2020 after COVID hit. And the tagline here is start a content first based business, build a massive audience, and become radically successful with little or no money. And you can absolutely do that. We see influencers and athletes and entrepreneurs doing that all the time nowadays with social media. And also, guys, we interviewed Joe back in 2017, as mentioned earlier. That episode is episode 469. We actually republished it last year when COVID hit because I thought it would be great, great information for people during COVID and lockdowns to check out. So that's 469. I recommend checking that out. And so tell us, Joe, why you retired, you sold your company for $30 million. You were writing mystery novels. You were, living the dream by working on your nonprofit, spending all the time you could with your family. And then all of a sudden, you decided to come back into the entrepreneurial world and update your book. Why did you do it?
Oh, geez, it's funny how things work out. It was March, the first week of March 2020, when The Will to Die, my mystery novel, was launched. We had a big launch party at a bookstore.
It's great timing.
Yeah, this was right before everything locked down. And I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, so probably 2 weeks later, Ohio was locked down. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And I actually at the time was working on the second version, the what is going to be part 2 to The Will to Die. And like you mentioned in the preview here, I started just seeing some of the activity that was going on. I was getting emails from people that were losing their jobs, have lost their jobs, about, hey, Joe, tell me about this content first business. Is the Content Inc. book still relevant? I know you wrote it in 2015, and I was walking through the model, and I'm like, okay, that's weird. And I just started tinkering around. I looked at the book sales of the first edition. I'm like, okay, book sales are going up. And I checked with the publisher. I'm like, are you doing any promotions around this? Like, what's going on? And I was like, no, we're not doing anything. And then I checked the podcast numbers from the Content Inc. podcast, which I hadn't produced since the end of 2017. And those were going up. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. So I just started to look at it. It is
extra weird because most people don't know this, most podcasts had a significant decline. And ours was like up to 40%. When COVID hit, because nobody was driving to and from work where most podcasts are consumed. So, yeah, please continue.
Yeah, people just started searching for, and I think that it was this flood of uncertainty. I think you had a lot of people losing their jobs. I think you also had a lot of people rethinking what was important to them.
Yeah,
like, this is now the time that I can do this thing. I'm working from home. I had a friend of mine who had been a teacher forever, but then was forced to work at home, and then realized, I really like this work from home thing. I don't think I want to go back into the office and teach in person. So maybe I can do some things. Anyways, and so I said, okay, well, maybe there's something out here. I checked with McGraw-Hill, my publisher. I said, let's redo the book. Redid the book, did all the case studies, started interviewing it, wanted to figure out if any changes happened to the Content Inc. model. We updated a little bit. It's a 7-step model. The one thing, and you brought this up a little bit before, that I added in was more about the exit strategy, which is so important, because when somebody decides to go into a content first business, you should know from the start how you want it to end. A lot of people don't think that way.
Yeah.
But they just start, I'm going to do a blog, or I'm going to do this TikTok thing, and I think I can make it, or I'm going to be a gamer, or I'm going to do this corporate gig. You should know going in, and it can always change, but you should know what the exit is. What do you want out of that? What should the outcome be? So, like, for example, you said we sold the business. Great. In 2008, and I talk about this in the book, I wrote down, my wife and I sell our business by 2015 for more than $15 million.
Nice.
And I read that every day, mostly twice a day, in the morning and in the evening,
Mm-hmm.
so that I would be very strategic about the decisions that we made, because that was the overall goal. So great, it worked out well for us, and I'm a big fan of visualization. So that's the way that we went forward. But anyways, went through the book, did the whole thing, launched a Content Inc. book again, relaunched the Content Inc. podcast, started a new business called The Tilt, which is basically a 2-time email newsletter for content creators so they can figure out how to be content entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very different thing between a creator and an entrepreneur. So how do you build a business out of this content creation thing? And yeah, here I am doing it all over again. I'm sort of on, on my terms. I'm not working it full time. I still do Orange Effect Foundation. We actually just had our big fundraising event yesterday. It's
Uh-huh.
for speech therapy for mostly kids on the autism spectrum. So
Nice.
we do all those types of things. But there's there's so much talk out there, Chris, about how do you create the content and how do you build an audience, but nobody's talking about a business model. How do you actually strategically build a business model so that you can have a successful exit, whatever that is?
Uh-huh.
Lifestyle business, sell it. I have a couple really good friends that have built multi-million-dollar operations, and they want to keep going.
Uh-huh.
Every year they're happy, they're very profitable, they're living wherever they want to live. And so that's great. My wife and I wanted an exit with Content Marketing Institute. So that's what we did. So very figure out along the way, how do you make this thing work? And I believe from start to finish, if you do it the right way, if you're really thoughtful about the decisions you make and the niche that you choose from a content standpoint, and you focus on owned assets like email, and you focus on diversification of revenue, I feel that within 5 years you can have a multi-million-dollar business.
Mm.
And so that's, and not without a lot of hard work. It is, but I believe anyone can do this. And I love your point about passion. Don't Passion can be great, but you got to be good at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So don't necessarily pick I'm so passionate about this. Well, are you good? Do you have Are you have skill? Can you be the leading expert in that informational niche? Think about those. Those are more important. Where I'll tell, my son's really good at gaming.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he I'm sorry, he's really passionate about gaming, but is he really good at gaming?
Mm.
That's the question I want to know, because
Right.
maybe that's something you just do as a hobby and not as a business.
Right. Absolutely makes sense. So let's dissect it. And there's basically 7 steps to building a content first business. And I love it. You have the content wheel. And then if I can pull it up here, just to get an image for those that are watching
Yep.
on video there's a content
There
wheel,
it
you
is.
guys. And it's just so simple when you put it like this, Joe. So the first, do you want to,
Yeah. Do you want
anything
me
you
to
want to?
just go through the model, and then you can pick apart whichever you want? Does that make
Yeah,
the most sense?
absolutely. Absolutely. Let's do it.
So the first 2 steps, the sweet spot and the content tilt, that's your strategy. So before we
Okay.
start creating any content at all, we have to figure out what the heck are we going to talk about, and who are we going to target, and why are we doing this in the first
Right.
place? So the sweet spot is that intersection between what your audience's desire is. So you have to figure out who's the who are you talking to, what's your audience, what are the pain points, what keeps them up at night, and on the other side, what's your expertise area? What's your
Mm-hmm.
skill or knowledge that is over and above what anybody else can do? What can you be a leading expert in the world at? That intersection becomes your content idea, right? For
Mm-hmm.
us, it was content marketing. For a lot of people, it might be, manufacturing widgets,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, you're going to talk about that area. Now, most people stop there and they start creating a lot of content. They'll do an
Right.
email newsletter, or they'll do something on Instagram, or they'll do podcasts, whatever. But you're not necessarily any more differentiated than anyone else in that industry. So you have to take it to the next step, which is probably the most important. I talk about it all the time. It's the content tilt.
Mm-hmm.
It's that area of differentiation, your hook, that you can actually break through all the clutter that's out there.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. Let's say you picked cloud computing,
Okay.
hot topic. You're going to go into that, and you're going to be a leading expert on cloud computing and business to business. Well, go type in cloud computing into your local search engine and find out who's in that area and what they're doing. You'll find Amazon and Salesforce and Oracle and IBM, all the way down the list, doing lots of content,
Uh-huh.
sinking millions of dollars into that area. And by the way, doing it pretty much the same. They're not even differentiating against each other. How are you, with a minimal budget, not millions of dollars, going to break through all that clutter? That would be tough.
Right.
So we've really got to break it down. You've got to figure out, okay, how do I make my audience so niche that I can really be the leading informational expert to that audience? Or maybe you
Mm.
create a category. Maybe there's something called cloud computing and AI that nobody's talked about, or cloud computing and NFTs that nobody's focused on yet, where
Mm-hmm.
you can have the lead and you can figure that out and talk about it differently than everyone else. Maybe there's nobody doing anything on Twitch. So maybe you differentiate by platform. Maybe everyone's doing a podcast or a blog.
Mm-hmm.
So those are ways to differentiate and figure out what your content tilt is. For us at Content Marketing Institute, we actually tried to create a category. We called it, nobody was using content marketing as a term in 2007.
Yeah.
We called it content marketing. It was called custom publishing and branded content and custom media, but there was no solidified term. We said, look, if we focus a lot of energy on this term, we believe this is the term. We have the data that tells us this could be the term. And then 3 years later, it was the term. And then when everyone started searching for it, it just all went into our lap. And then we launched the event and everything took place from there.
So,
Go ahead.
quick question. Would it be unwise, Joe, or are there any circumstances where, say there's some company already out there that has two things that you're two things you're really passionate about, two things that are very unique, but there's already one or two people already out there using those two things, like
Sure.
say backpacking and hiking, or van life, and backpacking is one example you used in the book.
Yep.
Is it okay to, if you really love that business, you're really passionate about that business, and that idea, is it okay to follow that lead, or are you just gonna nail yourself in coffin early, and
You know,
you're just kicking a dead horse
the
already?
answer is maybe.
Yeah.
Uh, so I would make your list. It's great if you're good at and passionate about the same thing. So
Mm-hmm.
let's take your example. Van life, which we talk about in the book. There's a couple backpackers in the book that we talk about. They both have specific expertise. Like Kristen
Mm-hmm.
Bohr, who, she was one of the first ones that got into the van life scene. She helped coin that term. So
Okay.
she was first mover advantage. It helped her. Um, if we talk at firstsectionhiker.com, they talked about hiking in a specific area of the United States, became
Right.
the experts in that. So if you look at those types of things, say, okay, I want to talk about van life. Well, okay, let's take it an extra notch. Let's see if we can niche this thing to death and see if there's an opportunity. So maybe you're talking about van life, but you're using a different vehicle to do that. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole new thing. Maybe it's a different part of the country. Maybe it's long haul van life. I don't know what the different areas are, but go ahead and I would use Google Trends. I
Mm-hmm.
would use Google as your friend, type in van life and see what the other searches are after that. Go to trends and see what some of the emerging terms are. Maybe there's something that can become the expert in. But
Mm-hmm.
again, it's not just about your topical area. It could be, maybe you're talking about van life for disabled veterans.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Be something that's really niche, because I do believe in Kevin Kelly's 1,000 True Fans.
Yeah.
You can find those core 100. I mean, really, you start with 50, 100 people that really believe and follow you and become loyal to your content. They will help take you to the next level.
Yeah.
So figure out what that is. I've never to this day, so I've worked on, Chris, thousands of projects with entrepreneurs in
Mm-hmm.
almost all these areas, and I've never found one that was too niche.
Yeah.
It's usually the other way. It's
Yep.
usually you're too broad.
Yeah.
So there's lots of different ways to find that content tilt, and platform's another one. My son follows a political commentary, an analyst called Hassan. I don't know if you've heard of Hassan. He's very, very popular
Okay.
on Twitch. He was the first one that took the political game from television, from media, from podcasts into Twitch.
Yeah.
Twitch was only gamers.
Yeah.
So he went onto this new platform and he totally dominated.
Oh, nice.
So there's something about that. And there's all kinds of new platforms. You could do something different on Clubhouse. You could do something different that hasn't been done on Reddit. So the thing is you just can't do, you can follow the same business model, but you can't do it the same way.
Yeah.
So in some way you have to find whatever that hook is, and every good storyline has a hook.
Yeah.
So what is your hook, and be thoughtful about strategically figuring that out.
Let's go through some other examples that I thought were really good. People that also have created personal brands around this. Wealth and Happiness from Naval Ravikant.
Mhm.
You mentioned in the book collectibles and cryptocurrency, which turned into non-fungible tokens,
Yep.
which is hot these days. One that I would never think about: hockey players who wanted to become entrepreneurs or became entrepreneurs, and that's on the Top Cheddar podcast. And
That's
then,
right. They're doing a great job there. Like
yeah,
who would have known
no,
that these are things?
yeah, I know. And then Marketing and Simplicity with Seth Godin. And I love Seth Godin's stuff. Like, it is very simple and clear what he describes. Anything else at the top of your mind? Any other combinations that are really good?
There's so many. I mean, we talk
Uh-huh.
about, and I love Ann Reardon's case study. We talk about that in the book, how to cook that. I mean, how many food video series are there on the web?
Mm-hmm.
There's millions probably from different people creating some form. What she figured out, and this was early in 2011, 2012, she focused on almost impossible dessert recipes. Like, how do I create a 5-pound Snickers bar, or how do I create a Fanta bottle layer cake so it looks like a real Fanta bottle, and you open it up and it's a layer cake of all these
Mm-hmm.
layers.
Mm-hmm.
So she found an audience that really liked these complex dessert recipes. So while everyone was focused on, oh, let's go this healthy recipe here, or how do I make the salad, and they do some stuff with the video, she said, I know this stuff better than anyone else, so I can learn it. I'm going to go through all these amazing different desserts that when people see it, they say, well, how did she do that?
Mm-hmm.
So there's all sorts of ways to go, but the thing is, you just have to commit to it then.
Yeah.
Like, we're doing our own thing with the tilt, and you might say, okay, Joe, you're launching this thing again with the tilt. What's your content tilt area? And
Yeah.
ours is really going to focus on this idea called the content entrepreneur. No, everybody's talking about passion economy. Everybody's talking about creator economy. I feel that the driving force of the creator economy is this thing called the content entrepreneur, not
Yeah.
the content creator.
Yeah.
Just like content marketing, we're trying to create a term, and we're trying to create a market. I think that we'll do that. It takes a couple of years, so you have to be patient.
Mm-hmm.
But already we're seeing some search traction around that. We're seeing people use that term that didn't use it before. We're seeing people say, oh, that's me, I'm a
Uh-huh.
content entrepreneur. So these are things that can be done. There's a methodology behind it, but yeah, it's just, I feel so sad when I talk to entrepreneurs that are doing this and they start a podcast like, oh yeah, we're starting a podcast about supply chain technology, which you might think, oh wow, yeah, that's differentiated, until you really go into it and find there's already 100 podcasts on supply chain technology. So what is yours? Maybe it's RFID and NFT usage. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's like, whoa, what is that? That's something new. Nobody's talking about that. So just take the next step.
Nice. So we have step one, the sweet spot, finding your
Right.
sweet spot that you're passionate about and where there's an audience for. Then step two, content tilt, where you're blending those two things to be very unique in the marketplace, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then step three is the base. What's the base?
The base is where you pick your platform.
Okay.
And this is again where I would say a lot of content marketers go wrong, especially in bigger businesses where they feel they have to be everywhere their audience is at online.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel really bad, Chris, because I said in my book, Get Content, Get Customers in 2008, I said, be everywhere your customers are at online, which by the way was really
Easier
just, it was
back
it
then.
was it was basically your blog, your website, Twitter, and Facebook,
Yeah,
and
back
that was
then.
pretty much it.
Yeah,
Well, you can't do that anymore. You can't do that efficiently. And
right.
so basically, you have a limited amount of what I call content energy. And in order to break through all the clutter, we talked about this content tilt, you have to focus on being great at one platform.
Yeah.
So this is where you see people they're not content creators, they're YouTubers, they're podcasters, they're
Mm-hmm.
Twitch streamers. You focus on one channel. I don't mean that you can't use other channels to promote that.
Right.
So if the Tilt's ours is email, that's our main platform that we're building, an email newsletter. We still use Twitter
Mm-hmm.
to support. We're trying to build an audience on Twitter there, but really we're driving that back to email because that's our core platform. That's what we can be great at. That's what we're focused on. So that's where the building the base is figuring out where you're going to tell your story, and then consistently delivering it over a longer period of time. So
Yeah.
that, this is a 9 to 12 month period of the cycle where you have to deliver consistently. And when I say consistently, so if you are a weekly podcaster, then you deliver at the same time, same day, every week.
Mm-hmm.
If it's daily, if you're doing an email newsletter, and it's every other week, you set it at the same time every other week.
Yeah.
If you're on TikTok and you're doing dailies, don't miss a day,
Yeah.
right? You have to commit to that, or it's not going to work. This is a promise that you're setting up with your audience, and when you break that promise, you might never get that audience back.
Mm.
So YouTube is the same way. So you have to.
It's true.
So that's what we found in every case study. We looked at hundreds of case studies in the Content Inc. book, and every one delivers consistently, almost to the minute, every day, every week, every month, and then they build that audience over time.
So, as a fellow podcaster, this is a good question for you. I feel like now that as podcasters, and if podcasting is your primary platform, that you have to include YouTube in the array of Google, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts nowadays, which then puts on another job of doing it on camera. I'm curious about your thoughts about that, because then you kind of become not only just a podcaster but a YouTuber at the same time. What do you think about that?
So there's a couple. It's a great question. There's a couple things. First of all, YouTube is absolutely a major podcast distribution outlet.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I saw a stat the other day that said this something like the second most or the most podcasts are listened to on YouTube.
Yeah.
You're like, whoa, are you
Yeah.
kidding me?
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't realize that. So you could, and I do with my Content Inc. podcast, I just not very well. I just distribute the feed directly to YouTube.
Yeah.
So great, you can do that. It's the minimum thing you could do.
Mm-hmm.
You're not doing any extra work. So you're saying, okay, how do I take that up a notch? And this is probably what you want to get into,
Mm-hmm.
where you're saying, okay, well, I should do talking head, or I should do pictures, or I should do, make a production out of it. That's something that I think that you can get to a little bit later
Okay.
if you wanted to. I don't
Yeah.
think you have to immediately do it. So if it's already probably daunting enough to start a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So, because as you know, if you and I listen to our, podcast 1 to podcast 100, we
Mm-hmm.
shake our head and say, man, I was terrible. Like, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
Right now, because I'm on podcast, I don't know, 290
Uh-huh.
on one and 270 on the other one. So you've got 500, 600 under your belt.
Uh-huh.
You get a little bit better at this thing. And then you get more comfortable and say, okay, well, how do I take this to the next level? Then you can really add in YouTube. But
Yeah.
at minimum, I would use it as a distribution outlet. And you can do that with your hosting provider.
Yeah. It's a good point. Okay. So that's number 3, the base. What platform you're going to pick. Number 4 is audience building. Tell us about that.
So this is really what you want to do. And people still either don't like to hear this or don't want to believe it. Your number one asset that you're going to build as a content entrepreneur is your email database.
Okay.
This is the only thing that you have ultimate control over. You can
Okay.
build all the YouTube subscribers in the world, or all the Facebook fans in the world, or all the Twitter followers, and the algorithm's up to them. They could block you at any time. We don't know where those, you don't have any say in the decisions over what those companies do. Doesn't mean you can't leverage them. You do.
Mm-hmm.
What you want to do is you want to build some kind of email offering. So that's where we try to build our own audience, our mostly controlled audience, and revert that back. So if we use in the book where, Smosh, back in the day, they were the big YouTubers, they were gaining traction. When they said, okay, we want to ultimately have an exit here, they started to think about, okay, I want to move my subscribers on YouTube. up the subscriber hierarchy and drive some kind of email offering. So
Mm-hmm.
this is what you see most of the YouTubers, the podcasters, Twitch streamers, they have some kind of unique offering in email that you can only get in email, so you can build that email list. So I'll give you the example for Content Marketing Institute. So we started out with a blog,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't believe the first year we didn't have any kind of email offering. I just shake my head at all the email subscribers that we lost because we just didn't have anything available. So we started generating the blog, then said, okay, now we're going to create this weekly email. We're going to give them something exclusive, which you have to deliver something, some kind of exclusivity, some kind of new, different experience through that email,
Mm-hmm.
and then get them to sign up. And then once we got to about 10,000 email subscribers, then we started to monetize that. And now today, we don't own it anymore, but CMI has 220, 230,000 email subscribers. That's the engine that drives everything.
Yeah.
And that's what you find out so late in the process where we're trying to talk to content entrepreneurs, that
Mm.
everything is driven. If you look at the greatest media companies on the planet, look at Financial Times, look at BuzzFeed, Huffington Post, New York Times, whatever, look at what drives it. Everything is driven by email, having
Right.
that email address. Now, could that change in a year? Sure. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's been going pretty strong for 20 years now.
Yeah.
I feel that's still going to be a thing. I don't know what's happening with texting, SMS, how that's going. That could play a role. But right now, it seems like people are willing to exchange value, their email address, for some kind of free, amazing offering. And then getting that email address that gives you the opportunity to monetize 6, 7 different ways.
Yeah.
So really, you've got another 9-month, 12-month period where you're focused on, I'm going to use maybe Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or my podcast or whatever your platforms are that you're using, and try
Mm-hmm.
to drive that into some kind of email subscription offer.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And also you brought up texting. There's a couple entrepreneurs here in Austin, and their goal, they throw live events for entrepreneurs, kind of social events.
Mm-hmm.
Their primary goal is to get the phone number. So
Yep.
then they text, and we're talking about a crowd of people in their late 20s, 30s, and maybe early 40s. That's their niche. And so they want to send a text every time they have an event and say, click here, buy a ticket. And it's working really well. So, phone number is definitely second to email, I think, in today's world, especially with the younger generations, because they're all on their phones and they see that pop up and it's like, oh, new message from Chris or Joe, and Chris
Yep.
and Joe are doing this. And yeah, it's a
Yeah, you're
really,
right.
yeah.
I've been looking at it. I've seen some good examples out there. It's sort of at the top of this, I call it the subscriber hierarchy, where basically
Uh-huh.
Facebook is at the bottom, where you have no control, and your organic reach is less than 1%. Then you go all the way
Uh-huh.
up at the top. I think
Mm,
there's something with the smartphone. There's definitely email, and you've got membership communities where obviously there's an email primary key for your database. So if you have some own membership property, a training property, those types of things where you're getting opt-in email permission, those are also at the top. So
yeah.
those are the things that I'm thinking about ultimately that you want to consider as a content entrepreneur.
I like that. You called that the platform hierarchy. Is that what you said? Or
Subscriber hierarchy. I call, and
subscriber hierarchy?
it's in the book. Basically, it starts
Hmm.
at the bottom. You have all the social media channels at the bottom where you're like, oh, okay, well, you've got Facebook and YouTube where they could subscribe or follow you, and it doesn't mean anything.
Right,
Like
right.
YouTube can show it or not show it, or they can kick you off the platform, or they can keep you.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter. So that's where it's like this pull between reach and control.
Yeah.
Like you can get a lot of reach on these channels, but at the end of the day, you've got no control. So and then if you look
Mm,
at email, you've got you've got no reach. You're
right,
creating, that's your own channel, but you've got 100% control.
right.
So you want to figure out how you move reach over to control. And if you get control and reach, call your shot.
Uh-huh.
You're a multi-million dollar media company then. So
Yeah.
that's what's amazing about this.
Love it. I love that. Okay, so that was number 4, audience building. And we're on to number 5. Once we have an audience, we're
Yep.
going to monetize
Yeah,
revenue.
you got that's your number 5 is revenue, the all important thing. We just did our tilt study of the state of the content entrepreneur, and we looked at how long does it take from zero to get to first dollar,
Mm-hmm.
and it's 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, some people would say, oh, that's not bad. And some people say that's horrible. I think it needs to be much less than 9 months because you'll lose so many people. We have to get, I call it survival monetization. You
Okay.
have to get to revenue as quickly as possible because you've got to pay the bills. Like
Okay.
you have to live your life, and you're not just, maybe there's a lot of privileged people out there, and I'm one of them, that I was able to use savings and I was able to use credit cards while we got the business going, and I didn't have to drive to profitability right away because it took us about 2.5 years to get to profitability. A
Okay.
lot of people can't afford that. So you got to get to survival monetization. That might be sponsorship packages. That might be donation plans. That might be you're going to do a mini event, a mini conference, a virtual event, a webinar series.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're going to do a lot of Substack writers. They'll do paid subscription. Maybe you'll do an affiliate model. So what we want to do at this level is get to one,
Mm-hmm.
get to some kind of revenue. When you get to be a mature content entrepreneur. So if I look out from where CMI started in 2007 to, let's say, 2015. So by 2015, we were driving 8, 9, 10 different revenue options.
Right.
So that's where you get to diversification. But
Right.
from right off the bat, you got to start somewhere. And we started with a sponsorship program.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, okay, we're building some good relationships. We only have about 10,000 in our audience. What can we do? And I said, well, we can absolutely go out and grab sponsors. And we said, okay, we called it a limited inventory benefactor model, which is
Mm-hmm.
basically, we only said there's going to be 5 sponsors, and we're going to make it a little bit more expensive and exclusive for these 5 sponsors. And we're going to charge them $15,000 a year to do it. But that $15,000 a year that we were able to close from those 5 sponsors enabled us to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Nice.
and that then led into ultimately us launching Content Marketing World, which was almost $1 million event in 2011. But we wouldn't have gotten to that point unless we launched the benefactor program to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
So these are the things you have to think about.
Absolutely. Any new creative ways to monetize that you've seen, just say since past year and a half, that are kind of inspiring or surprising to you?
There's all kinds of work in this area, and a lot of it I don't understand that I'm trying to. You talked about cryptocurrency and NFTs. We have our own creator coin, social token called Tilt
Okay.
Coin. We launched ours in March, and basically we've set up membership and different tiers through our coin that on our Discord channel, so that if you have 5 Tilt Coin, you get into your own little group on community on our Discord channel, where if we do really well as a coin and more people buy it than not, we can actually redeem that
Okay.
coin and use it as a revenue option. We have not. I don't plan on doing that anytime soon. I want to keep the value in the coin, but the fact that there is a cryptocurrency that a content entrepreneur could launch is a whole new thing in the last year. It
Yeah.
didn't even exist a year ago.
Yeah.
So these are the things that we could do. You could launch your content as a non-fungible token, an NFT, a one-of-a-kind offering, and you could sell it on the blockchain if you wish to do that. So that's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. There's these things called DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, which we just did a story on it. I don't know a ton about it, but what you can do is, instead of trying to build your own audience, you can join a collective. So you can contribute to one community, and
Uh-huh.
if you contribute to particular articles, you get paid on that article.
Okay.
This is blowing my mind, Chris. Like, these things were
It's
not
nice.
available at all. So these are the new things that creators have that
Uh-huh.
they can do. And obviously, you've got things like, uh, all these NCAA college athletes now. They can start their TikTok channels and
Yeah.
Instagram, and they can sell sponsorships. They can do influencer arrangements however they want to. They could do a lot of donations. You could use Patreon as a great
Mm-hmm.
kind of donation integration, where you can say, look, I'm not making any money off of this, but if you like what I'm doing, please support me $5 a month.
Yeah.
And people are doing that, like their own Kickstarter program. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. I think that you might have to experiment at first. I mean, obviously, as a content entrepreneur, I love events.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's old standby. I was talking with somebody yesterday, a content entrepreneur, about launching a print magazine,
Yeah.
because they have a lot of sponsors in their community that still have print budgets,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no more print magazines, or they've gone away.
Right.
So they have a print budget and they're like, oh, well, we can launch a print magazine. We have the database to do that. There's no competition in the print space anymore. Maybe there's something there. So there's the old models, there's new models. I mean, the focus is on just becoming the leading informational expert in your niche. And then once you do that, it opens all kinds of opportunities.
You mentioned decentralized autonomous communities. Is that what you said?
DAO,
DAO.
decentralized autonomous organizations.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, Chris, I didn't even know what this term was 6 months ago.
I just heard of it now.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't. I didn't even know there's a whole community around this, and it comes really from the crypto community.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of entrepreneurs. If you read stories on the creator economy, which the creator economy is really what we're talking about here, but it's heavily focused on platforms. So you'll see,
Okay.
oh, YouTube's giving away $1 billion to their creators, or TikTok's investing X amount of money in their creators. So they'll call that, oh, that's the creator economy. And you and I are part of that creator economy.
Yeah.
But now then you've got these things where you are a creator, but you don't want to be part of the current centralized makeup. You don't want to be part of TikTok or part of YouTube or part of these commercial organizations. You want to be separate, and you want to join with others that feel this same thing, that there's something of this decentralized movement.
Mm-hmm.
So you're seeing, and there's like 5 or 6 really impressive sites that you can link up with and say, I'm going to join this. I believe in this community. I want to be part of that. And the more that you add into that community, you get paid in ether.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're seeing these things, it's blowing my mind. I'm like, okay,
What's
it's another business model for you.
could you name one or two that listeners could check out for this
I
decentralized?
I cannot name the names right now,
Okay.
but I can obviously get them to you because I'm not the expert in this area. But there's a gentleman named Richard Patey, Patey,
Okay.
that he just started an e-newsletter on this. He's part of our community at the Tilt. So it's Patey. If you search on him, his
Mm-hmm.
newsletter, he has a newsletter all about those communities, and I just subscribe to it.
Is that the first rule of those communities, is to not talk about those communities?
No,
Sounds
I
like it
actually
sounds
no,
like the Illuminati of like today, right? The decentralized autonomous organization.
it's real. It really is weird, and and of course I have to do my due diligence, and I've got to join one. Like
Yeah,
I've got to
of course.
figure out. You don't. It's the same thing with NFTs. When I get in an argument with somebody about, oh my God, these NFTs are crazy, and who would spend $1 million for it or whatever, I already know right off the bat that they have never been a part of that process.
Mm-hmm.
Like you
Right.
have to do it. You have to get your wallet, your MetaMask wallet. You have to go to OpenSea, Rarible, whatever the case is. You have to look at, why are CryptoPunks taking off?
Mm-hmm.
Why did Gary V launch V Friends, which he is raking it in with his NFT project, which is a 3-year conference project. So there's a creator, Gary
Yeah.
Vaynerchuk, that's done this whole thing. And if you buy an NFT off his platform, you not only get access to his conference for 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
you get the value of that realistically could rise. So if more people, like, you want to go to first year, it's like, great, then you could sell it. And
Yeah.
somebody wants to buy the next 2 years. So the type of access and control and power over some of these assets that you have, it's just blowing my mind. So
Yeah.
anyways, if you want to check out a community, V Friends is Gary V's community that he built. He's done it all with NFTs. I think it's 10,255 that
Mm-hmm.
he's created. Again, another way for a content creator to make money, and he wants to buy the New York Jets.
Yeah.
So he feels that if he does this really well, and it's going well so far, he might be able to do it. And he just bought a CryptoPunk for like $3.5 million too. So
Yeah.
he's not hurting cash wise. It's done pretty well for him.
Okay, so that was step 5, revenue. And so step 6 is diversify. And you make a really good example of diversification in the book. ESPN started as a sports only media channel in 1979, eventually got to the point where they could diversify, and now is one of the world's most profitable media brands with revenue of $11 billion. A simpler, probably more at home example of this is Joe Rogan. Started the Joe Rogan podcast, talked about MMA or whatever he wanted to talk about, comedy. And now he interviews some of the most impressive individuals on the planet, and like Bernie Sanders and Elon Musk, and he can sell whatever he wants whenever he wants to. He's into supplements, he's into gyms, he's into
Sure.
whatever Joe feels like he's into
Yeah,
at the moment.
exactly.
So yeah, tell us more about diversification.
So yeah, I mean, we should probably talk about two ways to diversify. So once you build that platform and you've built what we call a minimum viable audience, it's different for everyone. For us at Content Marketing Institute, we knew that we needed to get to 10,000 opt-in subscribers to start to generate revenue.
Okay.
So once you do that and you start to really drive revenue in that one channel, then you figure out, okay, now I need to diversify my offerings out. So for Content Marketing Institute, we just had a blog and email newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started diversifying our offerings. We launched Chief Content Officer Magazine in January of 2011. We launched Content Marketing World, our physical event, in September of 2011. We launched This Old Marketing Podcast in 2013. And on it, we launched books and started to launch all sorts of things. So generally every 9 months, once you have a platform that's really surviving and thriving, then you can start to diversify into other areas. And now, we launched a training program, and then we launched a West Coast event. We launched an awards program. Mm-hmm. So these are the things that smart content entrepreneurs do. Look, the same way with BuzzFeed, right? BuzzFeed was just one blog they started out as, and now they've got something like 75 different newsletters.
Yeah.
That you would never think of. New York Times, the same way, started as a newspaper. Now they do in-person events and they sell different products and services. And they've got Wirecutter, which is an affiliate site. So these are the things that you start doing to diversify. This is a good 3-year to 4-year mark, okay, where you really start to move quickly into diversification areas. You also might be looking, if you have the money to do it, you start to buy up other properties. Mm-hmm. So we, like at Content Marketing Institute, we bought our awards program, we bought our West Coast event program because we didn't want to take the time to build that up organically, which takes longer. And you're seeing that happen all the time. You saw HubSpot, marketing automation company, buy The Hustle. Mm-hmm. 1.5 million newsletter for entrepreneurs. So these things are happening. So you have that diversification, and then you have the revenue diversification. That's the same thing where you say, okay, Content Marketing Institute starts as sponsorship. Then we evolved into event program. Then we launched into our paid training program. Then we launched into our awards program, whatever the case is. Those are the types of things that we do. Once you get to that level, mm-hmm, then you can, the options in front of you, I mean, you're probably already generating millions of dollars. You might be getting close to generating over $1 million in profit. You can do whatever you want to at the business at that moment. But it's very important that a lot of people, once you get to this certain point of, oh, wait, we've got this audience on this channel, you want to diversify because you actually create a more loyal audience by reaching out to them different ways. Yeah. So you don't think about that. When we did research at CMI, we did this research in 2013, 14, we found out that our best customers, the ones that spent the most with us, were subscribed to at least 3 things. Didn't matter which 3. Okay. Just 3. They read the blog, they subscribed to the newsletter, they subscribed to the magazine or the webinar series or listened to the podcast. So I knew that number was 3. So what we try to do is get them signed up for one thing. Mm-hmm. We get them signed up for one thing. We're not going to sell them anything. All we want to do is get them signed up for the second thing. Mm-hmm. And we get them signed up for 2 things, then with 3 things. And then we're like, oh, we're just loving them with content right now. And we're creating a more valuable customer.
Yeah. Very well put. Okay, so that's number 6, diversification, and number 7, sell or go big. Let's talk about that.
So this comes back to the beginning, right? What was your goal? Why is your why? Why did you do this thing in the first place? Did you do this? Like, I wanted to stop working in 2015. It ended up being 2017 because I had an earnout with CMI, but it worked out okay. Do you want an exit? Do you want a lifestyle business? Do you want to grow this thing into a huge enterprise? I mean, it's interesting if you back to HubSpot, because we were thinking about them. So Brian Halligan and Dharmesh Shah started HubSpot as entrepreneurs. They had many, many, many opportunities
Mm-hmm.
to sell for multiple millions of dollars, and they could sell today for billions of dollars if they decided to. But their goal was to build this and go big and build this amazing large enterprise. And now I think they're worth almost 35-40 billion dollars
Wow.
from
Wow.
just, yeah, from just, and they literally did have to say no to multi-million dollar offers to say
Yeah.
go big. So you need to make these decisions. You don't want to be reactive, you want to be proactive.
Right.
So we go through, in this step, we go through, look, if you want to sell, like, my wife and I did, you have to have your list. Who are you going to sell to? Who are these people? What are the companies? Who are the main contacts of those companies? Are you, um, do they know who you are?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you get to know them, so that when you're ready to sell, that you already have the relationships with them? And that worked out really well for us, because I didn't want to go out publicly and say, oh my God, CMI's for sale. So anybody who wants to buy us, I wanted to go out to the companies that I felt would be best for us and our
Uh-huh.
exit, as well as keep that brand going. So we went out to a very small list of companies, and I had the individuals that I've been building relationships with for the last 10 years,
Uh-huh.
so that we could go ahead and do that. So this is why making your decision now, wherever you're at in the process, you got to figure out where you want to be, who you want to be, what you want to be doing in the next 5 years. And then you can figure out, okay, am I going to sell? Am I going to go big? Is it a lifestyle business? Am I going to give it to my kids? What are you going to do?
Yeah. Okay. So in the book too, you also talk, Joe, about how 0 to 5 million is very realistic in 5 years with this type of business. And let's talk about the time for each step. So I think the sweet spot, you say it takes about 2 months, or could take about 2 months for somebody to kind of hone in on. Is that
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that in the beginning, again, right in the beginning, you're finding your way. You're not going to have all the answers at once, but basically the first 2-3 months,
Mm-hmm.
you're figuring out what's your differentiation. What are you really good at? So that's why, when you see podcasts that just start out, the first couple episodes are different than episode 20 and 30,
Yeah.
because they figured out their hook, they figured out their audience, they figured those things out. So the first 3 months, absolutely.
Definitely takes time to kind of hone in on the vision of what you kind of want the end result to be. Like you mentioned, begin with the end in mind, right?
Exactly.
And that's a good time for that. Then the base. So choosing one platform. So you say about 12 months focusing on one platform, right?
This is the hardest part,
It can
because
be.
this is the part where you have to just do the work. If
Uh-huh.
you have, I mean, we're in that stage right now for the tilt. We found our differentiation. We're only 3 months old.
Mm-hmm.
So for the next 6 to 9 months or so, we're just delivering on our promise.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we're going to try to drive as many subscribers as we can over that time. And we have to get to 10,000 opt-in subscribers, because I've said to the team that we're not going to monetize until we get to that level. So
Yeah.
we've got like 2 or 3,000 to go.
Yeah.
So, okay. See, these are tough decisions to make, but this is all part of the strategy. So we're just 2 times a week, we're just delivering amazing value, hopefully, to this audience. And we're driving subscribers and referrals and doing those things. So whatever your channel is it YouTube? Is it your podcast? Just keep driving all along the way. And it probably goes into the next step with audience building.
Yeah.
All along that way, you're figuring out, how am I going to build this audience?
Okay.
So, and then this is a really good time as well, if you are let's say, a podcaster or a Twitch streamer or whatever, to figure out what your email offering is going to be. Are you going to send some once a month out to members, that you send something exclusive? Because
Mm-hmm.
you've got to focus on that email part. We mentioned maybe in the future it's phone or membership group, but right now email seems to be your best bet.
Yeah. And sometimes I think that step, the base step, is really, it's so tempting to diversify on another platform, right? It's so
Oh
tempting
yeah.
to, if you have the podcast, to put a lot of effort into YouTube, or put a lot of effort into Facebook, or the little clip arts that you're going to put up on Facebook, right? And Instagram. And yeah.
This
Yeah.
this that's boy, you've uncovered, this is probably the big challenge, because when I'll go do an audit of a content entrepreneur's business,
Uh-huh.
and I'll say, tell me what you're doing. They'll say, well, I started this podcast, and now I'm doing this on Instagram, and this is my Twitter strategy, and I've got this Facebook group over here,
Mm-hmm.
and I've started this Discord group here, and then I've got this e-newsletter thing that I'm doing as well, and then this influencer program over here. And I'm like, okay, you are in the building the base phase, and you're
Mm-hmm.
doing 7, 8 things. You can't be great at 7, 8 things.
Right.
You can't be. So generally, the recommendation is, sadly, I'm like, you need to stop doing the Twitter thing and the Instagram thing and the Discord thing and whatever for now, because you're not at that level. You've got to create the great, whatever your platform is, the
Yeah.
great podcast, and make that decision. And that's where we go in. And when I go and used to consult with these big $1 billion brands on their content marketing groups, they would be the worst offenders, because you'd go through and they're doing a little bit of
Of
everything
course.
on
Yeah.
all these channels. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what are we doing here? You're just creating a bunch of mediocre content
Yeah.
in every channel. You're not building an audience. What is this going to do? It's doing absolutely nothing. So
Mm-hmm.
what if we just created the most amazing podcast in your industry in the world to this audience, and this incredibly helpful e-newsletter companion,
Mm-hmm.
and then forget the 7 other things that you're doing?
Yeah.
And that's, they don't like to stop doing it. A lot of the ways that they show success is output of content.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, okay,
Shotgun approach, right?
yeah, exactly.
Is it okay, Joe, to like if you post on one channel and then you set it up so it automatically posts on a bunch of other channels? Would you recommend against that, or is it okay, or what's your thoughts?
I mean, it's anything's okay. I mean, you can go ahead and do it. Are you going to get any traction? Probably not. Probably
Fair
not. If
point.
you
Fair
if
point.
you're going to go into another channel, it has to be something a little bit more unique. Now
Yeah.
you can leverage, like I've seen some, you know, you know the podcast game better than I do. You know some podcasters that will take their podcast and do some really good overview emails of
Mm-hmm.
that. You have some podcasters that do some really good 60-second clips that they
Mm-hmm.
might use on Instagram.
Right.
Great. I love those types of things, because you're still promoting the main channel,
Yeah.
and you're focused on that. That's just a marketing initiative using another channel to your base platform.
Fair. Okay. Revenue about 6 months. 6 months in, you said you recommend starting to baseline monetize after you hit your base, correct?
Well, the research tells us that it's 9 months to first dollar, and it's
Okay.
18 months to first part-time help hire.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the research tells us. If you're
Makes
saying
sense.
what you should do, you should get your first dollar as soon as possible.
Right. Okay.
Now, that's because some people have to. You have to keep the lights on here.
Yeah.
I like to set a minimum viable audience goal. So what I would do, my recommendation would be, set your subscriber number. Again,
Okay.
so I told you the tilts is 10,000. We don't want to generate, I don't want to do anything but focus on building audience right now. We are in
Okay.
the base audience building phase right now, not revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Once I get to 10,000, I can move into revenue. And I like that for the team, and I like that for myself, because when I get up, all I'm focused on right now is, how do I get more subscribers?
Right.
And how do
Right.
I keep subscribers? And when you keep that focus, you will hit that goal. If you start to figure out, I was like, oh my God, I'm sweating over the revenue, which you always will be.
Mm-hmm.
You really want to get to a point where you have some kind of asset leverage before you try to generate revenue, because then you're going to have to start giving stuff away. And
Yeah.
once you start giving stuff away, you never can stop.
Yeah. Diversify. Don't diversify before 12 months, right? And if you've hit your minimum viable goal, then it's okay to kind of start to diversify after that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Starting your first one,
Okay.
you 12 to 18 months, you're in your base, then you can start
Mm-hmm.
to diversify. And I would not create another channel until you get to a 9 month mark, at least 9 to 12 months apart. So don't
Nice.
go saying, oh, I'm going to do an event and a podcast in the same month. Please. You can't, it's too hard to do. It's too difficult to do that.
Yeah.
So focus on being great each time. You've got the one platform, then you build the next extension, then you build the next extension, and on and on and on. And then when you get to the 5 year mark, you probably have 4, 5, 6 different extensions from your main platform.
Yeah. And then sell or go big, and that'll come after the 20, at least the
Figure out your goal.
24 months. Yeah.
Figure out. So if you're going to sell, figure out the number that you want to hit, like your minimum number, and figure out the year.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
these are the things that you're going to recite over, begin with the end in mind, like you talked about. You're going to look it over. You're going to put that in your goals. You're going to recite that every day, and you're going to figure those things out. Or if you get to that lifestyle business, what does that mean? What is a
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle business for you? What is the minimum revenue and profit that you have to generate every month?
Yeah.
So those are the things you want to keep in mind.
I would think this is still a great model, even if it takes you 10 years to hit the 5 million. Because if you think about it, say you make 100,000 a year, you're only going to make, in that 10 years, you're only going to make a million plus your expenses and taxes, yada, yada, yada. You don't have an asset after that 10 years. If you build a business model like this, even if it takes you 10 years to hit the 5 million, you're going to end up on a lot better
Mm-hmm.
position financially and with the assets of an audience as well, to where the rest of your working career is going to be really fruitful for yourself.
Well, you got to remember, you can get to five.
Yeah.
You might not want to get to five. You might think,
Yes.
what does that mean?
Yes.
So, John Lee Dumas, who
Uh-huh.
is with Entrepreneur on Fire podcast, one of the best entrepreneurship podcasts out there, he has said, and we talk about this in the book,
Mm-hmm.
that he wants a lifestyle business. He lives in Puerto Rico. He's very happy. He's
Yeah.
gotten that business to about $2.5 million a year. He's making what he wants to make, and he's done. He's
Yeah.
got 4 people on his team. He's
Yes.
happy.
Yes.
I know some other content entrepreneurs that are making and revenue like 150, 175,000 a year. They're dropping 75,000 in profit every year. They're super happy. They're
Mm-hmm.
working whatever they end up working, 30 hours a week. They're spending time with their families. So again, there's a lot of things that go into it. Now, we wanted to sell for 15 million. I knew to sell for 15 million, I had to at least get to $1.5 million in net profit ongoing
Right.
in order to sell at 10 times EBITDA. That
Yeah.
was our industry. That we were in the event business. So those are the things you have to keep in mind. So that means, okay, well, it's going to have to be about a $10 million revenue generating product
Mm-hmm.
offering with our products that we have. So these are the things that you can work out. You can do it anytime. Just don't wait until the last minute. Because what I don't want entrepreneurs to get into is you'll start building up this amazing thing, and then people are going to reach out to you and ask to buy your business.
Yeah.
And you're taken aback. Somebody came to me a couple of weeks ago and said, "What do I do?" I'm like, "You haven't thought about this before?" "No, I never have." "Okay, right now you need to put that offer off and you need to figure out what you want,
Yeah.
and you need to figure out how much you think you're worth, and what could be next for you if you hold off and say no. Like, what do you want to do?" So it's fairly complex. You just can't wait till the last minute.
Joe, if you knowing what you know now and you were starting out completely fresh as an entrepreneur in today's world, what platform do you think you'd choose? And any ideas on a combination of content tilts that you think are needed out there?
Well, I just launched, so I probably could tell you. I mean, we're email podcast.
Right.
Email podcast because it gives you the most control as creators
Mm-hmm.
and the business model. So right now, and by the way, if you look at, because I've been talking about email for 10 years, I think that is the best opportunity for a platform. And then you look at Morning Brew and The Hustle and New York Times, what they're doing with their e-newsletters. You're like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see why they're doing this. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
probably email. Secondary is podcasting. There's a lot of change that's going to happen in the podcast game in the next couple of years with Spotify and Apple duking it out
Yeah.
and YouTube involved and lots of things that are going on. Now, if I am in certain industries, like of course, if I'm in gaming, I'm all over Twitch. If I'm in politics, I'm in Twitch. If you're in an area where you have a lot of commentary and it's you as an individual creator commenting about things, I love Twitch as a platform. I'm probably thinking that's, you know, in the next, when you're talking about the big players, the big platforms, we always talk about, oh, it's Facebook and YouTube and whatever. Twitch is going to be right at the top of that list, in my opinion,
Mm.
in the
Good to
next few
know.
years. As a membership community, I love Discord.
Yeah.
Discord is really more on the gamer side. It's more the Reddit crowd, if you will,
Yeah.
but it's starting to go mainstream, and I like what it can do there. Um, so I would, and then for like a content tilt question, the biggest opportunity and the easiest monetization is non-consumer. It's business to business. It's
Okay.
if you are helping some business with some knowledge. So if you're in the manufacturing industry, if you know something about the supply chain, if you know something about warehousing, if you know RFI, those types of things where you're talking to businesses that need your expertise, or a business leader in a business that needs your expertise, those are the easiest to monetize. Because that's where the purchasing power is. And that's where you have sponsors that will pay you millions of dollars to reach that audience,
Yeah.
instead of, how do I get $5 for somebody to donate to my Patreon program? Not that there's anything wrong with that, because sometimes that's the way you got to go,
Yeah.
but it's just a lot easier to go B2B. So that's where I would look if you're starting something new.
Joe, last question before we wrap up. We always ask our guests for some high performance tips. And I know in your book, you mentioned, and you did earlier on the podcast, that you're big into visualization. And I think you say in your book, focus on something for 66 days and watch it manifest, or something like that. Can you describe your
Sure.
visualization process, how you implement it, and why it works for you?
Happy to. Yeah, I've done a couple videos on this, on record, repeat, remove, the three R's, if you want to check them out. So basically, the most important thing is I want to understand what my life's goals are, and I
Okay.
break those goals down into different areas. So career goal, wealth goal, spiritual goal, philanthropic goal, family goal, mental goal. And
Okay.
I have generally two goals under each one of those that change ongoing. Some are long term, some are short term, but they usually have some kind of a number and a time limit. Like I told you, that my career wealth goal
Mm-hmm.
was to sell CMI by 2015 for $15 million. And I review that every morning and every evening.
Mm-hmm.
So I write that down, and I actually write, I believe in writing things down, and I will go ahead and write it, and I'll review it in the morning and the evening before I go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
So to make sure that I get up right and I go to bed thinking about these things as I go. The 66 days, this is not my stat, it's a stat that we talk about, cite a couple different resources in the book, but that's how long it takes to build a habit.
Okay.
So let's say that you want to go be a runner. Well, if you want to be a runner, you need to get out there and run 66 days straight, and then it becomes a habit, and then you never
Right.
have to think about it and force yourself anymore.
Right.
So if you want to stop smoking, you have to basically go 66 days before you get to that point where you're not craving it all the time.
Makes
So
sense.
it's the same thing. So it's the same thing with content creation. You have to get to a 3 month mark or so before you feel like you're in a groove.
Yeah.
So that's where we talk about, you have to do these things ongoing. And then you also, the last thing I would say with this, once you set these goals, you should have one or two people in your life that you share them with,
Mm-hmm.
that help keep you accountable. It's just, let's say, oh, I'm done drinking. I want to be healthier. So you probably need to have that goal, what you're going to do, and then share that with your significant other or somebody else that can say, hey, this is my goal, and I need to know, you need to know, I need to know, you
Yeah.
need to know that I'm going through this, and you keep me accountable to this. And that's why there are communities out there for content entrepreneurs as well. It's like, hey, I want to do a weekly podcast. You need to help keep me accountable to do this every Friday morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, and send this thing out and do the work up front to get there.
Yeah.
So those are and I'm a big believer in that, and writing everything down. I got notebooks all over this office, and I review them all the time. And I think that if you look at the most successful people in the world, they do that kind of, what's my goal? Let's read this out loud. Let's visualize what it's going to look like. This is not rocket science. You just have to do the work.
Who are the people that you tell your goals to?
My wife is the one person, and I have a couple, depending on the goal, I have a couple friends that I will tell. But my wife knows all my goals, and she keeps me she keeps me on the straight and narrow with these. She's like, aren't you supposed to do this, or didn't you do that? And
Uh-huh.
it's, sometimes it's a little bit of tough love,
Yeah.
but you have to. And I found out that if you set a goal and you don't tell anybody, it's a lot easier to break it.
100%.
So
100%. 100%. Joe, I want to thank you so much for coming back on the show again, sharing all your knowledge. I always love talking to you. I love consuming your content. Keep putting great content out there. I'm glad you're back in the business for my own selfish reasons, but I know you're really helping entrepreneurs out there, helping the world, helping people find their dreams and follow their passions and monetize it and create sustainable lifestyles behind that. So thank you so much, Joe. We really appreciate you coming back on the show.
Chris, thank you. I'm honored, and hopefully in a couple of years you'll have me back
For
for
sure.
the third time.
For sure. We'll
You
be
got it.
we'll be around podcast 1,000 then maybe.
That's it. Yeah, I want to be number 1,000. That's
Okay. Okay.
it.
If the listeners want to learn more about what you have going on, what's the best place they can do that at, Joe?
Yeah, I'm at Joe Pulizzi, Pulizzi on Twitter. If you want to just hit me up, DM me for anything. But the main thing we're driving is the Tilt. So we'd love to have you subscribe to thetilt.com. And if you need a little insight into what we actually do, the research is absolutely free. You don't even have to sign up for anything. Go to thetilt.com/research and you can figure out what exactly it takes to be a content entrepreneur.
Nice. We're going to wrap up there again, Joe. Thank you so much. Listeners, we want to thank you guys for coming in and listening to Joe a second time. And we'll wrap up and see you on the next episode. Goodbye, everybody.